Coronavirus has forced a new normal on everyone around the globe. It means working from home, if you can. It means juggling childcare with work, if you can. And it means creating new or different streams of revenues to be able to survive, if you can. Many say this new, flexible way of working is a great thing for women. But is it really?
No, it's not a great thing for women. I remember all the memes that were flying around the internet when the lockdown was first announced to remind us to be cheerful and excited about socially distancing and working from home, because this is when William Shakespeare and Isaac Newton did their very best work, of course, when it was the plague and they were locked in. But the classic and important thing to notice there is that neither of them had childcare responsibilities.
Lauren Curry is the CEO of Stride and the founder of Upfront, organisations focused on getting women's voices heard.
You know, I think working at home can be easier and potentially even nicer than going to an office if you have a well-paid job with benefits and security. Being in lockdown can be nicer and even quite fun if you have a garden and a spacious house. But when all of a sudden there's no childcare, couples have had to have this hard conversation about who's going to take the hit. And we know that it's women who take the hit.
And why is that?
Because in Britain, 40% of women work part-time compared to only 30% of men. And we know that in heterosexual relationships, women are much more likely to be the lower earners. So when that conversation happens, it sent most couples back to the 1950s. Because women have had to step up to take the majority of the childcare on. And we know that our economy is subsidised by women's unpaid work. And I think this pandemic has made that so obvious and so evident, hopefully in a way that cannot be ignored any longer.
And globally, we know that women are the majority of the informal workforce. Many of the jobs that haven't been allowed to happen during lockdown. And not only that, we know globally that women make up more of the lower paid jobs, the social care, the teaching, health work positions. And again, these are the jobs that you haven't been able to do from home. So has coronavirus potentially brought us backwards in terms of feminism and equal opportunities?
Yes, I think it has. You know, even if we think to the state of play before the virus, young women especially, those who were struggling to live on low or no pay, were being ignored, undervalued, underpaid. The jobs crisis will hurt women, and young women in particular, the worst. We know that in every single country around the world, women earn less, they save less, and they're more likely to be in a precarious job. And we don't have adequate childcare, and the consequences are disastrous.
So then how worried are you then, as a feminist, that this pandemic is going to take us back? I mean, God forbid, to the 1950s.
I am extremely worried. I think the data is absolutely terrifying. So I sit on the board of a charity called Pregnant Then Screwed, which is a maternity discrimination charity. And they surveyed over 25,000 women. And the data is very, very scary. You know, women have been completely sidelined during this pandemic. And now, even if we start to shift our attention to recovery plans and back to work plans, they are still being ignored. And there are huge elephants in the room around the BMAE community, the impact that COVID has had on women from those social groups that are being ignored.
There are many couples around the world who have found a way to share the load of working from home together during this pandemic. But are businesses and corporations stepping up to enable this to happen?
There are many good, decent men with very good intentions who have told me that they would like to do more at home. They can see the burden on their wives or partners, but that actually their own bosses are far less sympathetic when they indicate that they need to help out than the bosses of their wives are.
Jill Whitty-Collins is the author of Why Men Win at Work and a former vice president at Procter & Gamble, the multinational consumer goods corporation.
So I think that just those stereotypical gender roles of who does the housework, who looks after the kids, have always been there. And I think they've been made extremely visible through this. The other big dynamic is how people are valued, how men versus women are valued at work. We know that in general, men are more likely to get the big jobs, more likely to get the promotions. Now it's not just a case of who's going to get the promotion. Now it's actually a question of whose job's going to go? Who are we going to let go? Because we need to let some people go. The reality is that if women are less likely to get promoted, they're also more likely to be let go. So there are a number of dynamics that mean that this is hitting women very hard. It's hitting gender equality very hard. It's hitting them in the home, and it is hitting them in their careers, and it will hit them in the next few months, a year, as potentially they lose their career altogether.
Do you think this exacerbation of gender inequality is reaching the people it needs to? Do you think the light is shining on it enough for policymakers and leaders to really take it seriously?
I really hope so. You know, it's interesting because in the first few weeks of COVID, I was actually really optimistic. Obviously, I wasn't optimistic in general, but about gender equality, I thought, surely now, the men who are not pulling their weight, surely they're going to see, they're at home, they're going to be working from home, they're going to see that their wives, partners, you see how much work they're carrying. They're good, decent men, they're going to step up. And actually, the survey data says that that hasn't happened at all. But I think that, as you say, what has happened is something that has always been an issue, which is women taking the lion's share of the unpaid work as well as doing the paid work. It's always been an issue, but I think it's reached such a critical point. I think before women could, in general, just about cope. They were exhausted, but they could just about do it. I think COVID's tipped them over the edge to, I can't actually do all of this. And I think that's made more people speak up, more people register the issue, not just the housework childcare issue and the unpaid work issue, but also, you know, the issues of industries that have been particularly hit by this, that are hugely led and run by women. For example, the beauty care industry, which was one of the last ones to be opened up. So I think the only positive thing is that it's tipped the issue to a point that people can't stay quiet anymore and can't, you know, roll their eyes and just get on with it. I think women are having to speak up and make demands. And so, yes, I hope that that will have an impact on the people who make the decisions and the people who have to bring us out of this, bring businesses out of this, bring society out of this in a positive way, which will require strong, healthy women. So I hope so. But the reality is it takes an enormous amount to get gender equality discussed. There is very much a not now, dear response to gender equality. I think the suffragettes faced the same thing during the war. And so it takes a lot. It takes a lot to shift it. And one of the big issues, of course, is that, you know, by definition, men are largely in power. And women are not represented enough in leadership. They're not represented enough at the table, which means the voices are not heard as clearly and as quickly as they need to be.
Men make up the majority of positions in power around the world, whether it's as a company CEO or head of state. US President Donald Trump formed a coronavirus task force made up of 12 men, 11 of whom are white. Can policies really be gender smart or inclusive if women aren't even at the table?
My full name is Saunoa Mali'i Karanina Sumio. You can refer to me as Karanina.
Karanina is New Zealand's Equal Opportunities Commissioner. New Zealand has a female head of state, Jacinda Ardern, and incidentally has one of the lowest rates of COVID deaths and cases in the world.
We are really fortunate here in New Zealand, of course, because our Prime Minister is a woman. Around the cabinet table and associate ministers and all those roles, there are 10 women and 17 men. So it's not 50-50 yet, but, it's pretty dominant. And amongst that whole group of 27, it's really diverse. You've got Indigenous peoples in there. You've got ethnic minorities in there. You've got the rainbow representatives in there. So we're really, really fortunate here that when we are planning our response to COVID, you've got that diversity that perhaps in other countries perhaps haven't been invited to the table. You can have diversity, but you've got to be at the table where the decisions are being made. So it's really, really important. So we're fortunate here. But also, if I look at our business sector, we've got some great leaders who are women holding CEO roles. We look at our social services sector. We've got really, really strong women there. They cannot be silenced, those voices. So I suppose we like to be optimistic here in New Zealand and think we've got the numbers, we've got the capacity, we certainly have the influence and the leadership from women. And I think that's made a big difference in terms of New Zealand's response to the crisis.
And New Zealand has really been held up as the poster child during this pandemic, certainly in the foreign news and what we read and hear about New Zealand. How much do you think that is down to having much more gender inclusive people around the table? I mean, if you look at the countries who have performed better, they are generally female-led. Finland, New Zealand, Germany. Is it a coincidence, or is it that more people are making the decisions together?
I think it's the latter. I don't want to estimate what our men are doing, of course, but you can't ignore the fact that when women are at the table, even the words we use to respond to crisis are different. So, the word kind and kindness, it's almost become our national strategy here in New Zealand because the Prime Minister talks about it all the time. So we all talk about kindness. It's about people. Yes, our economy's been affected, but people come first, our families. So we talk about our children, we talk about our elderly. So we're not talking about economics 24 hours. We're talking about our people and about our responsibility to each other. So I think, yes, when you've got women at the table, the dialogue, the narrative is affected, eh? And when you've got women in the media, the stories that are given prominence make a difference. And the stories are about people and about our children, about us as a community and about love and family. Of course, it affects the general psyche of a country. So it's really, really important to have those voices of women, diverse women, not just the elite women, but the diverse with our young women, they need to be at the table, and we don't get it right all the time, but we're doing our very best.
So to the big question then, has coronavirus been a disaster for feminism? Lauren Curry, CEO of Stride and the founder of Upfront, is adamant with her answer.
Yes, it has been. And that's why, the work that I'm doing at Stride is about giving people who are at the start of their career, who probably don't even identify with the word leadership because of these unhelpful narratives, to realise that everybody is and can be a leader, and leadership happens at the school gates, round the family dinner table, and in the boardroom. And the work that I'm doing at Upfront is about helping people build that muscle on how to speak up for themselves, but also speak up for others, to ask questions like, who is not in this room? Whose voice are we not hearing? Who wrote this story? Who benefits from us hearing this story if it's being told in this way? And I think each and every one of us, regardless of if we are employed or not, if we have a team or not, there's lots and lots of ways that I think of it as like micro support. Every time we spend money, every time we watch a television programme, every time we click something on the internet, we are giving support to that piece of content or that person or that business. And if we all can do that in a much more intentional way, prioritise reading books and buying from businesses created by Black women, prioritise funding your local businesses that are family run, and it's all of these small things that if we focus on them and these things become mainstream, they can make a difference.
For Jill Whitty-Collins, the author of Why Men Win at Work, rather than coronavirus being a disaster for feminism, she thinks it could be a turning point.
I hope and believe that ultimately it will be an enabler for feminism. So I hope that ultimately we will look back on this and say coronavirus was a catalyst for feminism and for driving equality. But we need to take that opportunity, and we, women, everyone, need to stop accepting the way things are and staying quiet about it. I think it's time now to stop being positive, patient and polite about gender inequality. We really need to take this as an opportunity to make some change, to get some action, and to make some real progress.
And I asked New Zealand's Equal Opportunities Minister, Karenina, the same question. Is coronavirus a disaster for feminism?
I don't think so. In fact, women leaders are stepping up. They're not letting people get away with things. They're very, very vocal. Our young women, our young leaders are speaking up. It's a real opportunity for us, because if we don't, we can't go back to what it was before. But we have to give people who are making the decisions, spending the money, some ideas on how to do it better. And I like to think our young people will go to vote and make themselves heard, because the future is for them. That's what we're shaping. We're shaping it for them. So I'm very optimistic.
That's all for today's Business Daily. I'm Tamsin Ford. Our producer today is Edwin Lane. And for more, please download our Business Daily podcasts.